Hello and welcome to Pockenrop. In today's video I am going to do another one of my top 15 number one singles of a decade, and this is the 1960s. As ever, I've used the PubMeeple ranking engine to create my list, and I have stuck to my strict rules of only one entry per artist. Otherwise there would be an awful lot of Beatles singles in this list. So let's dive in at number 15. And I have placed Blackberry Way by The Move. The Move were a band that came out of Birmingham, fronted by Roy Wood, and they had a number of hit singles, including the first single, which I think was I Can Hear the Grass Grow, played on Radio 1 when it was launched in 1967. But they eventually reached number one with Blackberry Way, which is just a really, really strong track. At number 14, I have placed the first song on this list that's written by Lennon and McCartney, and it's World Without Love by Peter and Gordon. This was very much a McCartney-penned track. Peter Asher, who was half of Peter and Gordon, was the brother of his then girlfriend Jane Asher. I would have loved to have heard a Beatles version of this. I think it's actually a very strong song, but the other Beatles weren't keen on it. And the opening line of Please Lock Me Away, they used to kind of take the mick out of Paul for a bit. And so I think eventually he decided to complete it but give it away. And World Without Love is my number 14. At number 13, I have placed Concrete and Clay by Unit 4+2. One of those singles that seems to have gotten forgotten over the decades. It's a great song, and there's a really good cover version of this by Kevin Rowland on his much maligned My Beauty album. Concrete and Clay is a really good song. That whole metaphor of the concrete and the clay beneath my feet begins to crumble, but love will never die. And number 12 is the first entry on this list for a song written by Hal David and Burt Bacharach, and it is the Walker Brothers' Make It Easy on Yourself. This is one of the great ballads of the 60s. It's one of the great vocals of the 60s delivered by Scott Walker. And it's just one of those songs that each time I hear it, I like more. Like I say, it was written by Bacharach and David, and they were one of the 1960s great powerhouse songwriting pairs. And we will see them pop up again later. And number 11 is the entry on the list by one of the biggest hit makers of the 1960s. I personally am not a huge fan of them, but I do like Paint It Black by the Rolling Stones. I think this is easily their strongest song, not just their strongest number one. And in some cases, there are bands that didn't make it on because the song that did get them to number one isn't by any stretch their best song. So, for example, Albatross by Fleetwood Mac, or Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys, which by no means my favourite Beach Boys song. But Paint It Black, I think, is their best song and their best number one. And number 10 is the Prefab Four. It's the Monkees and their soul number one, I'm a Believer. If you didn't know, this was written by Neil Diamond, and it is a wonderful song. This is a genuine classic. It's brilliant. I have played this in multiple gigs, and everybody knows it. Everybody loves it, whether that be because of the Monkees version or later covers by people like EMF, or it's featuring in the Shrek soundtrack done by Smash Mouth. I'm a Believer is an unbreakable song. And number 9 is the second and final appearance by Bacharach and David, and it's Bobby Gentry with I'll Never Fall in Love Again. Now, normally the version of the song has a lot to do with whether or not I place this on a list, but it's the song itself that's carried it into this position. Such clever lyrics. I think it's Hal David's best lyric, bar none. What a line. And apparently this came out from him actually visiting someone in hospital. What do you get when you kiss a girl? Get enough germs to catch pneumonia. After you do, she'll never phone you. That is just genius songwriting. And the melody that Burt Bacharach puts to it is timeless. It's beautiful. I'll Never Fall in Love Again at number 9. And number 8 is an instrumental. Now, there were loads of tracks that got to number one in the 60s that were instrumentals. There was things like Nut Rocker by B. Bumble and the Stingers. There was Telstar, what a track. Diamonds, The Good, the Bad and the Ugly in the late 60s. So there's a lot of instrumentals got number one, but the kings of them were undoubtedly the Shadows. And my pick from the Shadows that made this list is Wonderful Land. I think this is a gorgeous piece of music. It's one of the things that I often play on my guitar as a bit of a warm-up. It's beautifully melodic. It just soars. It's a perfect marriage of title and music. Wonderful Land by the Shadows. And number 7, and I promise I didn't engineer this, is Louis Armstrong's What a Wonderful World. So from Wonderful Land to Wonderful World at number 7. Beautiful songwriting and incredible delivery by Satchmo. And number 6 is I Heard It Through the Grapevine by Marvin Gaye. Again, we are looking at a song that is genuinely timeless, that has been covered by other people, but nobody tops Marvin Gaye's version ever. And it was his sole chart topper in the UK. It is his signature song, but it's absolutely fantastic. I Heard It Through the Grapevine at number 6. And number 5 is Elvis Presley. Now, I don't think even the most ardent Presley fan would say the 60s were his peak decade. They weren't. But Marie's the Name of His Latest Flame is my favourite number 1 of his from that decade. It's a story song in the best tradition of them, where your plot is that someone is waxing lyrical about their brand new girlfriend. They then reveal that it's Marie, and the singer was in the arms of that same girl that same previous night, and therefore knows that they've lost Marie's the Name. How could he tell her that that was the case? It's a great, great song, Marie's the Name of His Latest Flame. And number 4 is the earliest song on this list. It comes from 1960, and it's the Everly Brothers, Kathy's Clown. This was their first single after they had left their previous record label, Cadence, and signed to Warner Brothers. And I think at the time they were possibly the biggest signing on to a record label in history. And everyone thought that they'd been overpaid. But what they delivered for Warner Brothers as their first song is, in my opinion, their best number 1. And number 3 is the most recent song on this list from 1969, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Bad Moon Rising. This song holds kind of special place in my heart. And if you watch my albums that defined me, the very first thing that I mention is a rock compilation called Rock House. And tucked away, the final track on side 2 was Bad Moon Rising by Creedence. And number 2, Roy Orbison, Oh Pretty Woman. Roy Orbison was a rock and roll artist in the 50s, but he had his biggest successes in the 60s. And Oh Pretty Woman comes from 1964, which means that he successfully made the transition just into the British invasion period of 1963 onwards. He was held in huge regard by the Beatles. They toured with him in 1963. Misery from Please Please Me was originally written in a Roy Orbison style. And it was proven even later on that they held him in such high regard in the fact that George Harrison's project, which became the Travelling Wilburys, had Roy Orbison in it. It was an essential part of it. And they used to nudge themselves and like, can you believe he's in our band? We've got Roy Orbison in our band. So that brings me to number 1. It will be no surprise who the artist is. It can only be the Beatles. I did do an entire video all about my ranking of the Beatles singles. So it shouldn't surprise you what actually is my number 1 1960s number 1. It's She Loves You from 1963. Now, She Loves You isn't my favourite Beatles single. Go and watch the video to find out what it is. But it is my favourite Beatles number 1. 2 minutes of pop perfection. And as I've said on other videos, you can even, when you listen to it, hear the join between different takes. But who cares when it's that powerful a song? 1.6 million copies were sold of this in the UK. It was the UK's best-selling single until Mull of Kintyre overtook it in 1978, 15 years later. There is something timeless and special about She Loves You. It is my favourite number one of the 1960s. So that concludes my top 15 number ones of the 60s. Let me know in comments below what you thought I've missed off. What would you have included that I didn't? I'm sure many of you will have included Good Vibrations, but for me, it's just a bit overblown. You've probably got a Beatles track in, but would it be She Loves You? Would you have gone for Hey Jude or Day Trip or We Can Work It Out? Who knows? It's up to you. Do tell me in the comments below. Please remember, subscribe. We're rising slowly. Like the video. That little thumbs up that you give it really makes a difference to how things appear on Google searches. And do hit the bell to receive notifications about future content. I'm trying to put out a video once a week. We're nearly, end of September. So we're 2/3 of the way through the year. By the end of the year, I'll have put up 52 videos. Gosh. Let's see if my subscriber number can match the number of videos I put up. But until next time, thank you very much for watching and see you in a week.